Hello, everyone. This is Fernando Fuentes here at Galaxycon for the Pro Play Tour Lorcana, the first event for Rise of the Floodborn. So we're going to get to see all the brand new cards from the new set here, and this is going to actually be we're jumping into a mid match between Matthew and Brad. They're going to game two right now. Matthew won game one, um, and we're going to get to see how this matchup plays out. I caught a glimpse of what seemed to be Amber Amethyst from the side of Brad. We're gonna get confirmation from that when the shuffling is done, and then a Ruby deck from the side of Matthew, and so many different strategies came out from Rise of the Floodborn. Particularly, some of the more underrepresented colors like Ruby got a lot of support. Um, you know, instead of just being Ruby Amethyst like in set one, there was a control deck. Now they have a lot more aggressive strategy. So I want to see that at some point today. I do believe Matthew actually has a ramp deck. So he has a Ruby Sapphire ramp deck, and they got a lot of better early game tools, able to actually utilize some more removal in the Sapphire Ruby color using things like Lady Tremaine as a payoff card from Rise of the Floodborn, being able to play it as a 6-cost 3/4 with 2 questing power that removes a card from the opponent's board, alongside the very familiar Maleficent 9-drop like we saw in set 1. So a lot of very cool synergies from the side of Matthew that we'll get to see. Also item synergies when it comes to using Pawpsicles to draw cards. So a little bit of card advantage in the Sapphire color, which it was lacking before. So a great little combination here of Ruby Sapphire with the addition of Rise of the Floodborn. And then from the other side, we're going to have Brad probably trying to go under what Matthew is doing and be a little bit more aggressive with his Amethyst cards. And I did catch a glimpse of Pinocchio when the first game was ending. So probably a lot of questing to be had from Brad's side. So players are going to go ahead and do mulligans here. Again, we're going to see one thing that I really like is to see if the metagame from online translates to in person, and if all the players are able to assemble their strategies and have had enough practice with them, since the cards are brand new. A lot of interactions that are brand new, and players are going to be put to the test here in this big event to see how well they have mastered their strategies. So we're going to get to see a Pawpsicle draw a card from Matthew's side, and then Brad is going to play the Lilo from set 1. Lilo incredibly powerful at questing, but it is only a 1/1. But actually, this Ruby Sapphire deck has a little bit of difficulty dealing small amounts of damage. It's normally just single targeted removal, and because of that, this 1-2 punch start between Lilo and Pinocchio, the brand new Pinocchio from Rise of the Floodborn, that does 3 questing power for the cost of 2. Incredibly powerful if it's not dealt with in the early game, and actually Brad being able to untap with both Pinocchio and Lilo being able to quest for 5 this turn. So a fantastic start from his side, and he actually has Bodyguard Simba and another 2 questing power card in Maleficent. So incredibly good start from the side of Brad, and we're going to get to see if there's any sort of rush character retaliation from the side of Matthew. He's falling very far behind. He needs something to be able to deal with the Simba effectively on this turn and then try to challenge this Lilo or this Pinocchio, but instead he does have a development play in Fishbones, so does not have a removal, but let's see if he can develop some ink here to try to play that Maui on the following turn and see if that's going to be enough. But I do suspect this 8 questing power on turn 3 from the side of Brad is a little bit too good of a start. But we do get to see single target removal take down Pinocchio, being able to tap his character to deal with the Pinocchio on the other side. So Matthew did have something to say about it there, but still 5 questing power from the side of Brad. So let's see what other threats Brad can develop on this turn. Definitely doesn't want to stop playing cards on curve here, and he actually chooses instead to develop his hand a little bit, drawing 2 cards with friends from the other side, and taking this turn off to say, okay, I already have enough questing power in play. I'm going to game 5 this turn, play another Lilo after drawing 2, so not running out of cards and at the same time continuing on his way questing. So this does give a little bit of breathing room to Matthew, as only 2 questing powers put into play on this turn. So can he mount some sort of a comeback play? Let's have 1 card on the table, and we did see a rush character in his hand. Maybe he can develop 1 or 2 rush characters alongside with his ink, using that fish bones, and then moving into something like Lady Tremaine or Maleficent later on. But does he have enough time to be able to develop all his cards? We're going to get to see. There we go. Going to rush into the Simba. Dealing with that quite effectively is the 6/5 body, and then now Lilo being dealt with on the other side. So bringing down the questing power to 4, but the damage really has been dealt Brad already at 12 lore. So how can Brad find a way to close out this game before Matthew stabilize is the name of this game. And Brad, we did see friends on the other side giving him a few cards, but he is running low, so he has to rely on the next couple of draw steps along with whatever he has remaining in his hand to close out the last remaining 8 lore. And again, this very powerful fish bones scene. In set 1, it was placed in combination with steel cards in order to get a little bit of card advantage, but we do see now that blue has its own card advantage in this Rise of the Firmament set with the Pawpsicle engine, a very powerful item engine, and getting to see it paired with Ruby this time around. But not stopping is Brad, making another 4 lore and then developing a Stitch and a Venom Nim Snake. So goes ahead and leaves those untapped, and he is at 16 lore. Gonna have this Lilo dealt with, and he actually does not represent a game over on the following untap. So Matthew, given a little bit of time here to see if he can draw himself out of the situation, drawing a couple more cards by getting rid of his item in play, but keeping the fish bones, just because fish bones again gives him access to even more ink. He's very close now to his late game Maleficence, for example, and that would, we do catch a glimpse of one in his hand, so definitely something that can help him stabilize if he gets through this and the following turn. And again, Brad did have an incredibly powerful start, but is running out of cards and does not have game in play right now. So he has to find something like that Pinocchio, something like another Maleficent or Lilo in order to force out more cards from the side of Matthew. So what can Brad actually develop? Playing something like a 4 or 5 cost bomb here would be incredibly beneficial, and the perfect card to try to close out the game in this situation, Merlin Goat. So Merlin Goat, incredibly powerful addition to aggro decks in Rise of the Floodborn, being able to gain lore at the moment that it is played and at the moment that it leaves play, and it also has 1 questing power of its own. So that Merlin Goat closes out the game, representing game on the following turn, and Matthew recognizes even if he gets rid of it, it'll gain that last bit of lore and win Brad the game. So incredibly good closeout from the side of Brad. He was running out of cards, but again, that Merlin, very, very powerful addition to these aggressive strategies, being able to close out the game there. So players are going to shuffle up for a game 3, and it does seem like Brad definitely the one that wants to get on board early. We did see Lilo into Pinocchio not being able to be effectively dealt with from the side of Matthew, and that was simply a consequence of the Sapphire Ruby deck can ramp very efficiently, and it does have great removal toward the middle and later portion of the game, but it relies on rushers in the early game to deal with the threats from the other side, and just a little too slow being on the draw in that game. But we do get to see the Ruby Sapphire deck on the play in the next game, and that might help him out quite a lot. So get to see how the matchup changes from play draw. And I do suspect that Matthew having access to the fishbones at an earlier turn and being able to play cards onto the table before the threats from Brad are developed will help him tremendously, as is a consequence of, aggressive decks when they're on the draw a lot less effective. Matthew will have a lot more time to get sort of his setup going, get a little bit of removal going. And he's debating right now, is Maui fast enough to be kept in the opening hand? He does decide to keep it. That might be a consequence of him going first. Has enough more breathing space in order to develop that very powerful 5-drop. Still, from set 1 to set 2, the stat line has not changed. Just a really good card overall. And in this matchup specifically, he doesn't have to quest with it. It has no questing power. What he wants it for is removal. And it does that quite well. So we do see a copy of Judy Hopps, a brand new card from Rise of the Floodborn, giving him a little bit more access to this sort of mid-range plan. He doesn't just have to play all these bombs like Maleficent, like Lady Tremaine. He can have a little bit more of a curve-out centric strategy. 2 questing power from the Judy Hopps, able to draw extra cards by getting rid of his own items, or getting rid of powerful items from the other side. So a couple of options there. And then Brad, we do see, let's see if Brad actually has a 1-drop to play. He does. He has Maleficent. Actually, a very consistent set of tools from the side of Brad. He does have Maleficent and Lilo, both options for 2 questing power on turn 1. So that is very good from that color combination. And at the same time, no play on 2. Did start with a Pawpsicle just to help out sculpting his hand a little bit. Going through some cards, we do see a few Hades in hand, so we're going to have to see if he has enough time to develop those. And we do see the 1-2 punch start as we did in game 1. A 2 questing power card, this time in the name of Maleficent, followed by Pinocchio. And this Pinocchio just incredibly powerful when it is not met with an easy early game removal. And again, Sapphire, Ruby, if it's not late game, it's going to have to be sideways in order to be dealt with quite effectively. So that Pinocchio will get to quest for 3. But we do see on curve Fishbones. And all things are good for Matthew so far, all things considered. It's only going to be 7 lore in total after this turn from Brad, plus whatever he's able to develop on the side. So Matthew sitting quite comfortably with his engine already going, but we'll get to see. He does have to deal with basically everything in play right now. Another 5 questing power from the side of Brad. He's gone 2 questing power into 3 questing power for a total of 5, and then another 5 on top of that. So he could do a burst of 10 on the following turn as early as turn 4 if Matthew does not have anything to say about it. But we do see very powerful Rusher come down, deal with the Pinocchio. It only deals with one of these threats, however. So there's going to be a massive burst of lore from the side Brad on the following turn. But again, very powerful fish ones, letting him ink twice per turn. He's getting into that latest remaining, that Maleficent range. So is he going to be able to stabilize also with copies of Hades as well in hand? Is it going to be enough from the side of Matthew? He does have to deal with these threats as efficiently as possible. He's going to be able to attack down, challenge down at least this Pinocchio on the following turn, assuming it quests, which it will, and then use a single tower removal on either the Lilo or the Maleficent. Slowly but surely, Brad is getting to that magical number 20, and is this going to be... So he's going to go ahead and use the bounce effect of his Nim to bring back his Pinocchio, keeping it safe from the likes of something like Omari attacking into it, and that is incredibly powerful. And it also rushes to deal with the Maui, and the Maui will not have the ability to deal with this Maleficent or this Lilo. So an incredibly powerful play from Brad, a great inflection point for him. He's able to acquire back his Pinocchio, able to tap it on a following turn after he plays it in the future, and at the same time deals with the only threat from the side of Matthew. So here comes a very powerful Hades, but is Hades going to be enough with 14 lore from the side of Brad? It does deal with Lilo on the other side. Matthew, running out of cards, has been able to draw from Pawpsicle, but not anything outside of that. So he's going to have to top deck a couple of more removals, probably debating on whether he inks the last card in his hand or not, trying to fully rely on those top decks. And we know that Brad still has a lingering Pinocchio. And again, Amber Amethyst normally unable to produce a lot of card advantage outside of friends from the other side, but this sort of bouncing mechanics that were introduced in Rise of the Floodborn are a great way to gain that sort of card advantage by keeping threats alive. And here we go with another Merlin Goat right on time. Just a few more lore points away is Brad from winning the game, and with such low resources, can Matthew eke out some sort of resistance with the last few cards? So he does go ahead and get rid of his item card to draw two. We do see a Maleficent. It seemed like something like a Let It Go, but he's able to attack into this two questing power Maleficent on the other side. Hopefully, he can deal with the Queen as well or the Goat, depending on his options. Does ink twice, goes ahead and taps out and plays a Let It Go. So he's going to be able to deal with the goat on the other side and will not be able to quest, and then goes ahead and attacks both cards down. So Brad actually has nothing left and is at what seems to be like 18. So can he actually find? We do know that he had that Pinocchio from before, so being able to recycle that previously. And does Matthew actually top deck and out to this untapped Pinocchio? Oh, and he does. Perfect timing for that Let It Go. Able to deal with the untapped threat without having to attack into it, and actually has a draw engine going at the same time, so he can go ahead and use. Okay, so he finds a shield from this, able to find another fish bones. Just already has all the ink he needs, but that will become more cards in the future. And now it's a consequence of Matthew drawing a few cards per turn, seeing he can actually answer all the threats from Brad, and Brad developing three at the same time. So is Matthew going to be able to survive? This seems like a pivotal turn of the game. If he's able to draw a few outs to what is in play, but he needs to deal with so much right now. Brad just seems like he's going to be able to eke out the victory. He's looking a little dicey there for a moment because he again ran out of cards, and at the same time Matthew was finding his draw power, but that will be it. And the Pinocchio in combination with the Maleficent will close out the game on the following turn. Matthew recognizes that, and it is a match. And that was a nail biter there for sure. I did like the fact that Brad understood that he was running out of cards. He went ahead and said, okay, I'm going to use this Pinocchio, and at the same time, I'm going to return it to my hand, leave it for a future play, and then use the Nim to attack down the